What's up out there? Welcome back to some more Melvor Idle, and today we're going to talk about the Atlas of Discovery expansion, specifically combat. Now this is more of a primer than it is a guide, so don't take this as an actual guide, but I wanted to present all the items that I've found, and this is a sort of best in slot type of gear for what you get from the base game and the Atlas of Discovery expansion. We'll talk about stuff from the Throne of the Herald at the end, but that stuff kind of is OP, so let's just focus on the base game and what you get with the Atlas of Discovery expansion. So first and foremost, before you get into the expansion, you have to go through cartography and archaeology to unlock any of this stuff. So all the combat areas are unlocked. All the combat, the Slayer areas, and dungeons are unlocked through cartography and archaeology. So you can't do anything in here until you go in there. And then you have to find each area in cartography, which takes some things from archaeology. Like you may have to dig up something to find the area in cartography. Or well, for dig sites, but that opens up other things. And you basically have to follow these to open up. You got to find certain charts and items and whatever. Beyond the scope of this conversation. Point is, you can't get to any of this stuff unless you've done cartography and archaeology. So the other thing I would mention is, right off the bat, is make sure you have adjusted your agility properly and have it set to what you need. I totally didn't think about it, and mine is still set for skilling because that's kind of what I'm doing, but I don't want to change it right now, and quite honestly, I haven't had to. But just a reminder, if you're earlier in the game, make sure your agility is set for combat correctly and that you don't take penalties that you don't need to, because some of the penalties you take in agility can hurt a lot and make your combat side worse. Another caveat that I will throw out here is that this is a full completion account, so I have access to everything in the game. I am full 120 across the board, except for the final two skills, which I'm working on now. And otherwise, I have access to everything. So, or everything that I've found. I still don't have everything in the Atlas of Discovery expansion. And I'm missing, I don't know, what does it say here? I've got 81.93%. So I'm still missing a fair bit of items. There might be some cool gear in here that I don't know about. I don't know. That's why I'm saying I think this is sort of kind of best in slot for now. But caveats aside, I would also recommend that you go in to make potions. Now, I don't necessarily have all the potions, all tier 4s and stuff like this, barrier ignite and all this. I don't have all this done yet. It still takes a lot of these gems, and I just haven't gotten a quantity of gems. I've already gone through and done all the combat. I've actually beaten the expansion, if you want to say that. I just need to finish off the masteries and all that kind of stuff, find all the rest of the items, but I've beaten all the combat areas, Slayer areas, and dungeons. I am at least once. The final dungeon I've only done one time, but I don't have enough potions to really show those off. I don't think they make a whole lot of difference, but they do help, so make sure and craft them if you need them. And then summoning tablets. The whole combat in here revolves around this notion of barriers. And let me find a monster I can go attack here. We'll just go fight this thing. So you have to have summoning in order to fight this monster. You cannot fight this. There's a little blue bar that starts up top here, and that is the barrier bar. You cannot do anything against this creature until you've taken that barrier off. So if you don't have summoning tablets equipped, you're not going to get anywhere. So one thing, as I was prepping for this video, I never really noticed this before because I wasn't really paying attention to the combat. I kind of went at this a little different angle. But if you mouse over these summoning tablets, they now have base summoning max hit and a value. So if you go into summoning, you will notice that if you click on any of these tablets, like the lowest one on here is the Golden Thief, which only has a base summon max hit of 21. And then in the base game, the Dragon Familiar is the highest at 192. If you skip down to the Throne of the Herald expansion, the actual best summoning tablet in the entire game is the Spectre at 217, and the second best is the Spider at 212. So if you have access to the Throne of the Herald, you're going to get some better summoning tablets that do more damage. If you click on any of the non-combat ones, it says this summon does not attack, and it doesn't do anything. So first and foremost, you have to have summoning tablets equipped. I'm pretty sure it works with just one tablet, but if you have two, you get synergies. And with that synergy, you on all three combat styles. So if you mix Witch and Tortoise here, you get plus 90 flat barrier damage added to summon familiar if using magic. If you have Minotaur Turtle, you get the same thing for melee. And if you have Centaur Turtle, you get the same, or Tortoise, whatever it is, you get the same thing for range, plus 90 flat barrier. So you're going to get a little better. And there is some other synergies you can get out of here, which I honestly just now made the tablets for this today. So I haven't really looked at this at all. But it seems to me like those would be pretty good. Now, this one here, plus 30% barrier damage to summon familiar if target is a current Slayer task. That's pretty good, but these Slayer tablets are no joke to make. They are expensive. You get gold for that. Well, you have at least 75. You gain plus 40% summoning damage as barrier damage. That one would be good. This combination here, the Unicorn and Tortoise, would be really good because you're going to gain 40%. What you're going to notice is the flat 90 plus whatever flat number is not going to be as good as a percentage base, because a percentage based is usually a lot higher when it boils down. So anyway, looking at the summoning tablets, that's how you basically want to go with the most damaging tablet that you have. You don't necessarily have to. I didn't pay attention to that until yesterday when I started prepping it for this video. So I've obviously not paid attention to it. What I was using was my standard, like, say, Witch Dragon, or Witch Dragon, and then Minotaur, and say the Sleep one or something like that, or the Yak one. Like, I wasn't really too concerned with the what they were. I wasn't even thinking about the synergies involved and everything. And like I said, I didn't even have the Tortoise one until today. So I mean, I had it, but I had like two or three of them. I didn't have a whole lot. So I've actually made up a few for this video. So on the summoning tablets, you need to make sure you're using the good ones, or you should make sure you're using the good ones. And they are different. Some have more, some definitely have a lot more. So pay attention to that. And the next thing we're going to move on to is the actual barrier itself. So let's go in and get into a fight. I'll go with something a little bit more difficult so this barrier lasts a little bit longer. No, I want to go here. Yeah, because we're fighting melee against ranged. I need to be careful with that. So the point of having the summoning tablets equipped is that it moves this little gray bar up here. That is your summoning bar. So that every time that comes across, every time that ticks over, it's going to do damage against this blue bar at the top, which this thing, does this have enough damage? Or yeah, we're taking a lot off real fast. So your idea is to try to take this barrier off first and then take the health down. Now, a lot of these things start regenning barriers. So if you go too long without killing them, their barrier will regen over time. So you want to burn that off as quickly as possible. And one thing that I was doing, reading my notes here, one mistake that I made early on is I didn't craft up any of the gear. Like, I didn't have any of this stuff upgraded. I was using straight up Verloren gear for all this, for like the helmet, the chest, the legs, the gloves, the boots, and all that. And I was using a regular Atlas of Discovery sword. I was using the superior skill cape, and at some point you're probably going to want to use the level 99 Slayer cape, because you have to have this equipped for this one Slayer area, unless you have the superior cape of completion or a cape of completion of some sort. Those all work better, but that's the only one you have to have something equipped for. Once you find these Slayer areas, you kind of get into them. But back to the barrier stuff. Like I said, I didn't have all the gear. I was just using Throne of the Herald stuff, and it worked fairly well. What are we getting here? Lethal toxins. Yeah, we're getting that before. But need to take that barrier off first. If you don't take the barrier off, you can't actually hurt them. So it doesn't matter what synergies you have. It doesn't matter how good your gear is. You cannot physically hurt these things unless you take that barrier off first. Now, you're going to see this max hit change over as you play. So the max hit's going to start off at one number. Once the barrier comes away, it goes to a separate number. So once this guy dies here real fast, we'll see that switch. There it is. Well, it's there and gone. Max hit right now is, well, 500, because we had a little debuff on him. But max hit right now is 1765. That's because I've equipped this, which has got that plus 90 bonus, and then all the other gear that I have. Basically, everything I have on right now affects barrier aside from the Hinder Scrolls. So let's take a look at the actual gear real quick here. You'll see that I have the barrier burn shield equipped on every single one of these. This goes in the passive slot. This is the best one that I've found that sits in that spot. Now, there might be something better. Again, this is what I found to be sort of best in slot right now, as far as I'm concerned. I don't have all the items yet, so there might be something that's slightly better here and there. But this is like what I want to call the ideal loadout. Don't take that as like, this is the thou shalt use this, because you're going to use whatever gear you have. I would just make sure to point out that there are imbued bars of various kinds, which implies that your gear levels up as you go. Like you start with crappy bronze gear and you end up with good Dragonite gear, and the ancient gear upgrades on the melee side. So make sure when I say this gear, ranged, melee, or magic, I don't mean the ancient versions of it. I mean like whatever version you can equip. So if you're wearing red gear or black gear or ancient gear or whatever, just make sure it's the best you can equip at that moment, because you're going to be at different places in the expansion at different times. Like I said, I'm starting with a full completion account, so I've got access to everything right off the bat. I just need to go find all the items and craft the stuff for the expansion. So you just have to kind of fudge a little bit of what I'm saying here to fit what you've got. Like you may not have the ancient infernal cape right off the bat, or the, like some of this stuff, but these are, if you want to call it all the best gear that I can find at the moment, that's what this is. All right, we'll get off that. Barrier burn shield, plus 20%, summoning familiar damage. And I've got that on all three in the passive slot. Now, over here on the Eris side, I'm running God gear. I was doing that. Well, I do have the God boots and the God gloves on, but I did have this middle part here until I upgraded these ancient robes earlier today. So those are upgraded. So these ancient robes, when you upgrade them to the barrier version, they give you plus minimum spell damage, accuracy when using surge spells. So I probably should switch to surge spells. And then maximum hit with surge spells, 25% summoning familiar damage added as extra damage to barrier, plus 40 barrier damage added to summon familiar, and 35% chance to dodge crystallization. We'll talk about crystallization here in a second, but if you have this stuff upgraded, and this goes, again, I'll just reiterate this, that goes for whether you're using the air acolyte, the water acolyte, or like I haven't even upgraded some of these yet, the water expert and stuff like that, the fire expert. These all do upgrade into a barrier version. And the same thing with all the range stuff. I just don't have all the materials for it yet. So all these do upgrade. Now, we got the barrier burn shield. We've got the ancient gear. We've got the God boots and the God gloves. This is for magic. Then you will get the infernal cape upgraded to this thing. This doesn't really give you barrier stuff. It's a better infernal cape. And then there is this familiar staff. There is also a familiar two-handed sword and a familiar longbow. These all add some, they remove your max hit, so you hit less for your actual damage, but your summoning damage goes 60% higher. And then you add some familiar damage and stuff like that. So it really helps out on this. And these are all basically the same. They're just for whichever combat style. Then we have the barrier eroding ring. This has got plus 10% summoning familiar damage, which I have, all three of these have the same ring just because I've found enough of them. What I have not found enough of is this adaptive summoning amulet. This has got 30% summoning max hit and minus 15% max hit. So basically, again, your summoning is going to do much more damage, and your regular magic melee, whatever it is going to do less damage. But that's fine because you need to take that barrier off. Now, I also have that on my melee. I do not have that on my range because I don't have a third one yet. I haven't grounded out, but I do have the lesser summoning amulet. This only gives you plus 10% max hit and minus 10% attack interval for 4 of your turns. So this is like an aura. It has to actually, it goes off 30% of the time. This is not every time, where these are every time. These work all the time. This lesser summoning one is just something that works here and there. Like if I hover over that, it's going to show that it's only going to do this 30% of the time. So that is how I'm running. And for I'm just running dragon arrows right now. There's a host of arrows and bolts. Where did I put all that stuff? Probably put them over here. So there's some crystal arrows, there's some aeronite arrows, some pure crystal arrows. We've got poisonous ones. Then there's some different bolts that you can get. And I don't think these do anymore. They just have more crystallization attempts or something like that. I don't think these do anything for, say, I guess I don't need to keep clicking on it, but I don't think these do anything for actual barrier damage. But there are new variants of bows or arrows and crossbolts that you can upgrade from. And there are there's a ton of other items in here. Like there's all these different shields and stuff, but none of these do anything with barrier. Like these boots increase your attack interval. This mage mask here does this burning roots, but like I said, none of it does barrier damage. So this is why I'm not using any of this stuff. Like there's some really cool stuff that might be good later in the game or for Throne of the Herald or something like that, but none of it's good for barrier. So that's why I don't have it equipped. Now, I would also add that there is a bunch of unholy stuff. I've not even touched this stuff. I've not needed it at all. I have no idea what unholy does. I know it unlocks some additional prayers, the unholy prayers. I haven't messed with it. Don't know. Haven't tinkered with it. Haven't messed with the gear. You don't need it for the barrier stuff, so you can just ignore that, I think. I say that, and it's probably really good, and you shouldn't ignore it, but I haven't used it. I don't care about it. So we've talked about the barrier and the gear, and we need to talk about crystallization. So if you come over here, as far as I can remember, I don't remember any of the dungeons having anything with this crystallized stuff, but these crystal caves and depths, these things have creatures that you cannot deal with unless you've got the crystal equipment on. So if we fight this thing here, the crystallization is rough. 100% chance to apply crystallization, which basically stuns you and you take 50% extra damage. So this is no joke to get hit with. I tried this with just the regular gear from Throne of the Herald, and I got stunned, and it wasn't really hurting me, but I wasn't doing anything because I was basically stunned constantly. So that's why you need to upgrade this gear, because this gives you a chance to dodge the crystallization. I mean, it will hit sometimes, but for the most part, you'll avoid it, and you do need that. So I think these things have barrier on them also. So not only do you have to deal with the barrier, but you have to deal with the crystallization, which really hurts. But on the flip side, once you've gotten this gear upgraded and equipped, you actually get a chance to do crystallization. So somewhere in here, 1% chance to apply crystallization right off the bat. So with some of this gear equipped, you can apply that. I would also add that these pure crystal gloves actually have damage reduction on them. Typically, most of your melee gauntlets or gloves do not have any damage reduction at all. So I was kind of surprised to see this. And there are two different versions of this. There is the green and the red. And the red crystal gloves, or there's like a crystal defender you could use, but this is not as good as the weapon that I have, so I don't have it equipped. But then there's also the pure crystal stuff, which is better. And then all of this stuff gets combined into the various gear. If we go over here and go to the melee side of things, some of these require the pure crystal stuff to upgrade into their final form, the crystallized form of this stuff. So while this has got the B on it for barrier, if I upgrade this, it does crystal sanction or dodge crystal sanction or whatever. So anyway, a lot of upgrading to do. So we've done the barrier, the gear, and the crystallization. Let's talk about dungeons real quick. The Golem territory. This one you will want to do magic against. That the final boss is a melee boss, so you want to take the Golem territory on with magic. The Unholy Forest is going to be taken on with melee. The Trickery Temple is ranged. The Cult Grounds is ranged. And I'm not sure on the Underwater City. I can't remember the final boss of it. I want to say I don't remember now. I fought this thing one time, and I followed the combat triangle for all the bosses throughout, or all the monsters throughout, and basically it is this dungeon, or it is this group of areas here. So I think you might want range through the whole thing, because I think the final boss is magic, but don't quote me on that. I have not tried running this yet as just to idle it. Like I said, I've ran it the one time, got it done, called the expansion beaten, and then moved on to some other things. I still need to go back and set that up. And like I said, this is just a quick primer guide. This is not a detailed end all be all. So anyway, that is what I would attack the different dungeons with. Now, let's talk about Throne of the Herald. My easy example that I have set up is over here on ranged. So if I just run this gear, Eris God gear and the barrier items and all this stuff on here, I am getting a max hit of 424. Let me equip the summoner's gear that you get out of, what is it? The Necromancer's Palace. This summoning gear is ridiculous. And it is the helmet or the hood, the amulet, the gloves, and then there's a ring that goes with it. And when you get all four of them in, it turns green. My damage is now 938. That went up significantly. Like, this makes a huge difference. And I also have 47% damage reduction with the Eris God boots. If I swap that over to the Vorloran Watcher boots, I go up to 53%. So this does a hell of a lot of damage. Now, this is also with these summonings on here. And that one's already favorited. Let me make sure and favorite this because I want to come back to it. Oh, I overwrote the one I didn't want to. So if you equip the spider, let me go back. Right now we're at 938. If I equip the spider and I didn't get it. We'll go in here and do it from here. If I do the spider on the left and the specter on the right, we now go up to 1994. 1,994 damage by just simply equipping in the best. And this, because this does plus 100% summoning max hit. So that does even more summoning damage. I didn't even pay attention to the synergy. So this thing does just this ridiculous amount of damage. So if you go in here and fight, I don't know, let's find something magical. We'll go fight these roots. If you go fight this thing with this setup, like, you're doing 4,758 damage against that barrier when it connects. And then you're just smashing this thing down from there. It's absolutely insane the amounts of damage you can get once you combine all this stuff together. Now, again, this is actually using stuff from Throne of the Herald. So if you don't, and that's deep in game into Throne of the Herald. So if you have this and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go use all this gear, that's way down here, the final dungeon just before the Throne of the Herald. So you're not going to get this on a fresh account, going all the way through all that. But if you have it from completing the Throne of the Herald stuff, this just beats the hell out of all this other stuff. So that is kind of been the experience that I have. Now, does the Unholy stuff help out in any way? I don't know. Haven't used it. It's something I just need to look into at some point. But it took me a long time to figure out to actually upgrade all my gear. And then I didn't realize that the actual summoning tablets had different values. I hadn't looked at it. I just hadn't paid attention. I've been so busy focused on cartography and archaeology and working on everything else that I totally just ignored all the rune crafting and fletching and smithing. I just kind of ignored all that. And when I went into combat, I had like the straight up Vorloran suit on. And what was I using? Probably the, what's this thing here? The Featherstorm crossbow. So like I was using all the Throne of the Herald stuff with this Necromancer setup and just totally no problem. I had no issues with any of this. So even if you don't equip all this, if you've got that Necromancer set, you can take out all this content. And it wasn't until just like in the last week or so when I actually started fighting Melantis or whatever this is, the underwater city. Until I started doing that, I didn't really look at changing any of this stuff out, and I didn't realize this gear upgraded. So, I mean, you can be dumb and ignore it like I did and get by just fine. But, well, this video's gone on for a little while, so I'm going to cut things off. Hopefully, this is helpful. Again, this is not like some be-all, end-all guide. You're going to want to equip the best thing that you can. And this is the best items that I have currently. If you notice, there is 3 different versions of this shield. One is 5%, one is 10%, and one is 20%. Same thing with all these gems down here. You start with plus 15, You've got, I'm going to skip this one because it's only plus 10, but then you've got 5, 10, 15, 20, and 30% damage on these gems. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to choose from here. I'm just showing you the best options that I've got equipped right now. I do have all the rest of this stuff. This is just the better options that I have. Like this barrier draining gloves. These give you plus 60 barrier damage, but these are not as good as this barrier burn shield. So like this is, for example, this is 1994. If I switch out to these to my passive, it's still 1994. So maybe it's the same. But it seemed like it was actually worse, but it doesn't actually change. I guess I do have it ready to equip. But at any rate, that is kind of the best combination of stuff I've got. That will do it for this video. Like I said, hopefully it's helpful. Hopefully it gets you through whatever you're trying to get through. And that will do it for this video. We will catch you on the next one. Take care.